Hello, everyone, and welcome to Good Morning Trading. I'm delighted to have you back. We're going to review the latest stock market, economic, financial, and maybe even psychological news from the financial markets. We're still on the 13th day of the war, and yesterday, Iran set fire to 2 oil tankers in Iraqi waters. This contradicts Donald Trump, who says the war is won and over. They still have the ability to take action, and of course, the Strait of Hormuz is more or less blocked. So if the ships are, let's say, American, European, Canadian, or Australian, they're blocked. If the ships or oil tankers are Chinese, conveniently, they're allowed to pass. So it's a double standard, if I may say so. But what's important is that this creates tension on oil barrel prices, which for now aren't skyrocketing, and which, for the moment, keeps oil at a high range, but nothing excessive either. So here you can feel that everything is going to come down to the standoff. If the Strait of Hormuz remains open to free passage, we'll almost stop talking about this war altogether. But if the blockage continues and oil prices gradually rise and that spreads to the rest of the economy, then we'll see inflation as a result. We're going to be hearing about this for a very long time, so let's take a close look at everything that's happening with our charts. We'll start with the barrel of oil, and we can see it's going back up. We're around $92, and interestingly, this rise happened overnight. That means it was the Asian markets that pushed oil prices back up. The Asian markets are actually under more pressure than the European markets, since they depend much more, especially China, because about 20% of Chinese oil industry consumption depends directly on Iran and its oil. They were buying it, quote unquote, internationally, illegally, with a very nice discount. So whatever happens, it's going to cost China a lot more, since they'll have to buy and make up for it on the regular, legal, global oil market. That's why we've seen a slight increase. We had the intervention that was able to slow down this increase from the International Energy Agency, known as the IEA, which released 400 million barrels of oil to counter the surge in energy prices. So it's essentially the G7 and G20 countries. Let's say they release just a tiny portion of their strategic reserves. So what does that represent? 400 million barrels of oil? That represents 20 days, since about 20 million barrels pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Per day, that's 20 days of freeing up the strait, or about 3 weeks. 20 days, it wasn't done for nothing. Let me remind you that Donald Trump had set the duration of the conflict at 4 to 6 weeks. 20 days plus 13 days, that gives us 33 days. And that comes out to 5 weeks. So there's a certain consistency. But in any case, the concerns. The average Western consumer knows they're going to pay more for their barrel of oil. They couldn't care less if eventually an atomic bomb were to go off in the Middle East. It's not his concern, it's too far away for him. Unless you tell him that a ballistic missile with a nuclear bomb could reach him, then maybe he'll feel a little more concerned. But there you have it. What can you do? As they say, my stomach comes first and the end of the world comes later. That's pretty much the order of priorities for human beings. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's what allowed him to survive and eat mammoths. But, well, at certain levels, that can also be problematic in the other direction when it comes to survival. And I'm not going to give you a lecture on ecology. We really don't care. You're not at Good Morning Ecology, you're at Good Morning Trading. So, let's get started. As long as a barrel of oil stays under $100, it's fine. Of course, the Iranians have promised a barrel of oil at $200. Why not $300, $400, $500, or even $1,000? No problem. Well, of course. I'm joking, but we're in the realm of propaganda, exaggeration, and all that. The problem is that this is completely picked up by the media because it creates anxiety, and anxiety equals your brain time, and your brain time equals more expensive advertising. That's all it's about. They're just tapping into your basic anxieties, our basic anxieties. I'm absolutely included in that. I think I'm part of humanity. At least I think so. As for Bitcoin at 70,000, it's not moving anymore. No need to go further. Gold, actually, the situation isn't that tense. It's still going down, so as a safe haven asset, yes, right at the beginning, you can see it started to accelerate. It went up to 5,004. Oh, yeah, and now it's dropped again. Quick mental math, at 6%, we're around 5,100 or 5,150. What's interesting is that it stopped going up. And so that actually shows us the pulse. A little bit of the level of concern, like with the Nasdaq yesterday. As you can see, it ranged exactly at the level 1 pointed out to you on both weekly resistances. Yesterday was an incredibly boring day on the Nasdaq. So much so that I didn't take a single trade. And believe me, for me not to take a trade, it really means nothing happened. There was even a moment I felt like it was an American holiday. I checked my connection, I tapped on the screen. No, really, that's how it was. It was exactly what I was afraid of, so try to remember this. This is a classic scenario. When you have a huge acceleration, like we went from 24,000 to 25,000 points. So in a single day, we gained over 4%. And systematically, right after that, you get a low intensity day. I won't go into the details to explain why, but it almost always works like that. And here, that's what happened. So we let things play out, and now I hope things will start moving again a bit. Overnight, it was really Asia that drove the movement. Depends much more on Iranian or even Indian energy. And yes, you might not know this, but India is a very large producer, or at least a very large seller of oil. But since they can no longer buy it on the black market from Iran, they can't supply anyone anymore. So now, over there, India is no longer exporting oil. And so this is now affecting all of Asia across the board. It wasn't just the Chinese who were buying oil on the black market going through India. You have Vietnam as well. So everyone is feeling the impact a bit, which makes them a little more sensitive. For us, Iranian oil was a bit far away, and we had supply sources that were much closer and not very, very, very expensive. Especially the United States of America and Algeria. We have liquefied gas, assimilated Saudi steel, but for oil and liquefied gas. So, well, we weren't really affected. I'm not saying not at all. I'm not saying we never got hit from time to time. A little thank you. In terms of oil, Indian oil, which was coming in more or less 10 ranks, well, sometimes it was a little cheaper, but we weren't impacted at all like all the Asian countries can be. So I just want to let you know that it's over. For now, India is no longer producing. Well, actually, India has never produced oil, but they're not getting oil anymore either. We used to pretend to ignore the origin a little bit, especially for the Nasdaq. What interests me here is the rebound we had on the pivot, on the monthly pivot at my famous 24.1750. That's my favorite level, so if we come back to it, I'm going to work the 750s a lot. It's been a jackpot since the 24.1750 level. It's been a jackpot since the beginning of the year, so we go for it, and we see some reactions, a little spike. Be careful if we break through those 24.1600, which could signal a downward phase. Here, we can see that the Asian market has caused all the futures indices to drop. They dropped down a level, but we could very well recover that level during the day and return to the orange zone. That's the scenario that seems most likely for now, unless 3 oil tankers suddenly explode. Of course, I also want to point out that we've talked about this, but we've only talked about this for the past 24 hours. Their minds, their minds, their minds, their minds. Good. The Iranians have mined the Strait of Hormuz. Well, we didn't find a mine. And then, well, that's been denied. France has denied that the United States doesn't know much about Canada, it says. That's nonsense, Spain said. You smoke, etc. etc. So it seems they haven't mined anything, but it's generating a lot of buzz. We made a lot of money just from the ads. On the DAX, the 47,000 points, not on the Dow Jones, the DAX at 47,000, we would have made 50% anyway. So the 47,000 is holding on to Dow Jones. We're at last week's low. It seems to be holding. There you go. It's not an index I would bet on. Over the past 15 days, we still have a rather bearish profile, which is the opposite of the Nasdaq, which is almost at its peak, and the S&P 500, which is really right in the middle of the range. So you really have all three. You have the Dow Jones in a downward phase. We can see that Dow Jones is dropping faster. If it goes up, it's the Nasdaq. And then in the intermediate phase, you have the S&P 500. So you have all three possibilities. It's pretty nice. As for our DAX, it's not at 47,000 points, but at 23,150 points. Exactly like the Dow Jones, it's hitting the previous week's low. It's stabilizing right there. Well, for now, we'll see how it goes. They're trying to bounce back, but honestly, you can tell these indexes aren't in great shape. And speaking of indexes that aren't in great shape, let's finish with the cherry on top. The CAC 40 still at a 2-month low, slightly below 8,000 points. So there's nothing to expect from it. It's the underperformer. If the market drops, it's the one that falls the fastest. And if the market rises, it's a slacker. So it's the one that rises the slowest. It's that simple. If you're investing in the CAC 40, you're really making a patriotic gesture, and maybe they'll nominate you for the Legion of Honor. Or you're in the sadomasochist category, which is totally psychologically acceptable. Why not? Well, it still hurts you, so you need to stop. Stop suffering. Stop buying the CAC 40. It's the one that performs the worst. It drops the fastest and recovers the slowest. Honestly, buying more of it, well, there you go. Listen, I have to go. I need to switch over for the people in my school. We've got a little session ahead of us. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow. And tomorrow will already be Friday. This week has gone by incredibly fast. I'm just double checking that it's really Thursday. But yes, this week really has flown by. It feels like it should only be Tuesday. Actually, I'm campaigning for 48-hour days. 48 hours with 8 hours of sleep. That would suit me perfectly. But there's a bit of friction with the CGT about that. The unions aren't in favor. We'll see how it goes. On that note, we'd have to change the Earth's axis of rotation so that everything moves at half the speed. That might be a little complicated, though. But hey, why not? It's part of my political platform. You know, there are things way more ridiculous in the political platforms of 80% of politicians when it comes to economics. Retiring at 60 or 62 is just as ridiculous as slowing down the Earth's rotation by half so we could have 48-hour desis. All right, with that, take care, lots of love, and see you tomorrow, Friday.